Tonight, we're taking a look at some of the creepiest things people say they've seen in real life shared by users on Reddit. Just moments that happen to ordinary people and has stuck with them ever since. Some of these are unsettling, some are generally terrifying, and a few are hard to explain. So get comfortable because we're diving into stories that prove real life can be a lot stranger and scarier than fiction. Hello, friends and family. Welcome back to another episode of Weekly Bazaar. I'm Montana, and I do not have Jessica tonight, so it's just me. So if you're new here, welcome. We've been waiting for you. Jessica has been having some internet issues all week, so we still wanted to give you an episode. So here I am. We usually don't do 2 Reddit stories in a row. Usually we go to Reddit when we need a break from research. And I didn't want to do my topic yet because I'm still working on it and it's going to be a really good episode. It's a really good topic, so stay tuned for that. So we're just going to do, like I said, Reddit again, and we're going to do the scariest things that people have seen in real life. And these are allegedly true stories. And the update I have for you is we were on Remain, Roam, Return podcast again with Christian and Damien. We always have a great time. They are a lot of fun, very nice. So go check out their podcast. And then in a couple weeks, they're going to be on ours. So we're excited. So thanks again, guys, for having us on. So it's going to be a little weird, just me talking. So like I said, we still wanted to give you an episode, so let's dive into it. I haven't read these stories myself. I like to be surprised, just as you. So I chose the thread with the most upvotes. So here we go. All right, so this is by Reddit user only issue 6040, and this was posted 2 years ago. When I was a child, both my parents went to work early, so they would drop me off at my grandmother's to eat breakfast and go to school from there. My grandmother died my junior year in high school, and I started coming straight home from school. During this time, my mother started complaining that when she got home from work, the receiver of the phone, an 80s style corded push button phone next to her bed, was left off the base. I wasn't using the phone, but she would insist I must have because the phone was hung up properly when she left for work. One day, I got home a little early. Now, I need to pause and tell you about the layout of our apartment. From the front door, I looked directly into the living room, dining room, the door to the kitchen. There was no other door. The windows were old-fashioned, narrow casement windows with screens, and we were on the 3rd floor. Anyway, as soon as I walked in the door, I clearly heard 2 footsteps in my parents' bedroom. Ugh. I dropped my school bag and foolishly ran to the bedroom. It wasn't far and only took a few seconds. I got to the bedroom and no one was there. However, I immediately noticed that the receiver of the phone on my mother's bedside table was on the floor. It was placed so that the cord to the base was stretched out as far as it could go. Ugh. I later tried to replicate the placement by shaking the table, tipping the phone, etc. I could never get the receiver off the base. When I finally resorted to knocking it off with a finger, it would fall on the table or next to it. The only way I could replicate the placement of the receiver where I found it was to carefully stretch the cord, place it, and hold it for a few moments. It could not have gotten to that spot by accident. When I found the phone, I hung it up and it immediately rang. I answered it and it was my dad. He asked me what was wrong. I asked him why he asked. He said he had called apparently just before I got home, and someone he thought it was me that answered the phone but never said anything. He finally hung up and had been trying to call back and only got through after I hung up the phone. I've never figured out what happened. I definitely heard footsteps, and I'm just as certain there was no one there. No one went by me, the windows in the bedroom were not disturbed, and my parents had too much stuff under the bed and in the closet for anyone bigger than an infant to hide in either spot. Also, after this, my mother never found the phone disturbed again. Okay, that's terrifying. I don't know if I think that this was paranormal this time. Maybe someone was in the house and maybe they had more room to hide than the user thought. I don't know. I don't like that story. That's too creepy for me. Also, if any, millennials, where you at to have a phone like that? This is by Malarkey Bandini, and this was also posted 2 years ago. I've seen some pretty wild stuff in my life, but most of it is explainable. The one event that comes to mind was witnessed by my dad, brother, and myself, and it's a 2-part encounter, but I still consider it one event. This is a bit long, and I apologize, but I feel it might be worth the read. It was around 1998. My family and I had just moved into an old clapboard house on the edge of town. It had a huge backyard with a 6-foot wooden privacy fence on one side and a metal chain link fence about 4.5 feet high around the other 3 sides of the yard. Neighbors on one side, which is the privacy fence side, a small grass alley that ran behind the back with a street light, and then another yard, etc. Our bedroom was an old converted sunroom on the back of the house that faces the backyard. It had a floor-to-ceiling windows all along the back wall looking into the backyard. We didn't have many options as to where to place our beds, so my headboard was against the windows, and my brother's bed was about 8 feet away with his headboard against the opposite walls with the foot of the bed facing the windows. One night, we were up pretty late. I was in bed, and he was in his just talking about random things when suddenly he got quiet. I figured he fell asleep. But then I heard him whispering in a shaky breath. So I'm like, what? And I hear him whisper again. So again, I'm like, speak up, I can't hear you. And he goes, don't move and be quiet. In a forced whisper, but I, thinking he's messing with me, and was like, bitch, why? And I'm looking at him, and mind you, my head is to the windows and he's pointing into the backyard behind my bed. So quickly sit up and turn around and see this huge dog head staring almost nose to glass through the window right behind my bed. I'm almost nose to nose with this thing. Just a single pane of glass and about 10 inches of empty air separate me from this thing. Now, when I say I screamed, I mean I screamed. Not my proudest moment, but hey, I was like 10 years old. Well, anyways, the thing quickly ducked under the window and then ran to the side of the yard and jumped the 4.5-foot chain link fence and bolted off into the darkness. My dad came running into the room with our mom right on his heels. We were able to get out that something was looking through our window, so our dad ran back to his room and grabbed his shotgun and then headed out the side door of the house and into the backyard. Unfortunately, or fortunately, I don't know, he didn't find anything. Wrote it off as if I had a bad nightmare and my brother wouldn't admit to seeing anything, so I took the blame and was told to quit messing around and go back to bed. Typical parent response. Well, later that night, maybe an hour or so, after I begged my parents to let me sleep in the living room because leaving the house wasn't an option, and still being refused, I was made to sleep in my room. So again, my brother and I are in a room with these floor-to-ceiling windows. We are just completely rattled. We are both huddled in his bed, staring out the windows, when we see this thing come walking along the chain link fence on all fours, and the fence only comes up to his mid-shoulder, so this thing is huge. It sniffs the ground, does a few circles, and then hops the fence into the backyard like it's nothing. It walks over to the window and again gets nose to the glass like it's trying to see in. We are panicking the whole time. Well, my brother is like, "Fuck this." And as soon as he steps off the bed, we hear this loud bang, and then there is a flash of light. The thing at the windows gets knocked sideways, and without even missing a beat, it turns and runs across the full length of backyard, jumps the back chain link fence, it cleared the fence, the alleyway, and then landed in the back neighbor's yard. This is easily a 15 to 20 foot jump minimum, clearing their fence like it was nothing, and it was gone at a dead run, up beside the house and off into the darkness on the other side. My dad comes tearing around the side of the house with a shotgun in hand and makes a mad dash for the side door and slams it shut behind him. He is screaming and hollering, "We gotta go." We pack it up and head to the hotel that night. My mom absolutely refused to believe we saw what we said we saw, and we only lived there for about 6 months. It rattled my dad so much he didn't even want to come back. He told my mom that we were just going to move the next day, but she wouldn't allow it. After about 6 months, she conceded and we moved. Mind you, this is in the coastal plains region of Texas. We have no large wild canines here. We have stray dogs and coyotes, but nothing that would even remotely touch on how big this thing was. My dad swears he shot that thing with a slug from about 15 feet away with his 12-gauge shotgun right underneath its left arm, hitting it in the ribs where its vital organs are, and nothing, it just ran off. He said the thing that freaked him out the most was that when he saw the thing jump the fence, it walked towards our window, crouched but still on its hind legs. It wasn't walking on all fours. And then when it got to our window, it stood up straighter, and he could tell that while it looked like a dog, its body was shaped wrong. He said it looked like a really stocky person wearing a dog suit, but he could tell it wasn't a suit. Also, that when it was walking in circles, sniffing the ground before coming into our yard the second time, it wasn't actually sniffing the ground like for a scent. It was staring at our window with its face to the ground, like it was acting like it was sniffing. It was acting like it was sniffing the ground, almost as if it was playing a part to see if anyone would notice it. He said he had dogs his whole life, and everything about it was doing was wrong. A while later, I asked my dad when he was in the backyard if he thought I was having a nightmare, and he told me my brother is the one that gave it away. He said with how panicked I look that my brother was almost white as a sheet and wouldn't take his eyes off the window. He said, "Your brother has never looked so scared and never been one with just making stuff up." So after going back to his room with my mom as he was laying there thinking about it, he decided that if my brother was as white as he was, then we had to have seen something. So he grabbed his shotgun in case he had to scare some creeper out of our yard, and figured he was going to go through the garage and out by the far side of the house and sneak to the corner to see if someone was peeking in our windows or if someone was actually messing with us. He never actually thought we saw a huge dog-looking thing, just that maybe with it being dark outside and us being kids with overactive imaginations, maybe we just mistook someone as something. But when he saw that thing come up the side fence and with the street light in the back alley lighting up the backyard, he saw it and it freaked him out. He was going to creep back inside until it went up to our window. And he said as it stood up, he just got this instant feeling of just dread, like something was going to happen to us. That's pretty creepy. This person, queef taste us, good for you, said Dogman. There's a famous video of a person live streaming on Facebook about the creepy thing that they've been seeing behind their house. And as they're filming, you see the figure of a large creature almost as tall as a light pole pass under the street lamp. Chilling footage. You should check it out and see if anything looks like what you saw. I don't really know anything about Dogman, but to me it reminds me of when we did SW Ranch a few episodes ago, and Terry was shooting the wolf dog SW creature in the side where vital organs were supposed to be, and it didn't even face the creature. It just looked at him and was like, okay, whatever, move on with your life. So this is what makes me think of that. So I don't know. I almost guess SWs. But like I said, I don't know anything about Dogman. Anyone does, like, email us. Either way, that's pretty creepy. Okay. This is by expensive_plant4586. Again, 2 years ago. I went to college in Providence, Rhode Island. My dorm room was my roommate and I, with beds opposite sides of the room and desks by the foot of the bed. The usual dorm setup. Anyway, my boyfriend and I were hanging out in my room one day and he was laying on my bed. I was up next to the bed and bent over to grab something. I heard him scream and freak out, holding his eyes, I'm not exaggerating, and he wouldn't tell me why. Eventually, he tells me that when I bent over, he saw a shadow behind me that actually kind of looked like him and it freaked him out. He had an afro, so the silhouette would have been pretty distinctive. We didn't really talk about it afterwards and never told my roommate. She wasn't in the room. A couple of weeks later, I'm asleep in bed with my boyfriend. I wake up in the middle of the night to my roommate packing a bag, clearly panicked. She kind of rushed out of the room and didn't see me awake, so I didn't say anything. The next morning, I see her and ask her why she rushed out of the room in the middle of the night. So then she tells me she woke up in the middle of the night and saw my, quote, boyfriend sitting at my desk and asked him why he was up. She then saw my boyfriend sleeping next to me. She believed in ghosts and stuff, so she freaked and left. It really freaked me out because we hadn't mentioned the look-alike my boyfriend saw to her, and it sounded like she saw the same figure. Living in Rhode Island made me see some weird shit. That's actually a state I still need to hit on my bucket list to hit all 50 states, and I'm almost there. So I'm like ready to see some shit. But yeah, that's pretty creepy. Like a ghost doppelganger? Is that a thing? I don't know. That's weird. Alright, this is by I Like M. Rogers. Post was 2 years ago. So I'm going to guess that's when the person posted the thread question 2 years ago. My very first job was as a radio DJ at a small hometown radio station in the mid-1990s. This was a tiny building out in the middle of a field with a 500-foot antenna out back and a single road from the main road to the front door. The transmitter was right behind my studio, behind some dampening glass, and had a light bulb that was always on. The station was so small that you could see the light bulb in the transmitter room all the way from the driveway/roadway. There were 2 doors, the front door and the back door in the transmitter room. That door didn't even have a handle on the outside, and it was always locked from the inside. It's impossible to enter that door from the outside. I worked the evening shift from 5 p.m. to 10 p.m. After my shift, we actually went off the air for the night. I was always the last person there, so after I went off the air, I had to pull commercials for the first hour or 2 of the morning show, clean dishes, finish up some production work, etc. After working there for a year or so, I had racked up a couple of weird experiences. Shadows scurrying about at the corner of my vision, lights turning off and on. One evening, after getting in and taking over the board, I was just sitting there preparing myself mentally for the next 5 hours. I looked up out of the studio door towards the front door, and I saw the perfect shadow shape of a man who was probably 6 foot tall. It was there, then it wasn't. I went to my boss, who was not a nice person on her nicest days, and said, "So I have a weird question." She sighed, looked at me, expecting who knows what. "Have you ever felt like someone was here who wasn't?" My boss yelled across the building for someone to come into her office. When that person arrived, she tilted her head at me. "He's seen Jimmy." Supposedly, everyone had seen Jimmy, the original owner of the radio station. He popped in from time to time. "He won't hurt you. He's just checking in on the station." So from then on, Jimmy would make his appearances. His was a harmless presence. My studio faced another unused studio, and he would flash the lights on and off a few times. I said, "Hi, Jimmy, everything's going well," and it would stop. He turned a water faucet on once. He whispered my name in my ear one night, which freaked me out. At least, I think it was him. You see, there was another malevolent being that also lived there at the station. It didn't really have a name, and it was about shin high. This one always gave me a really bad feeling. It was the one who would dart beside me, its shadow just in the corner of my eye. I always knew it was there just because I would feel downright freaked out. One night in particular was the scariest I've ever been. Here it is, 30-ish or so years later, and I still can't explain it. As soon as everyone left the building for the night, I got the feeling like it was there. I just turned on all the lights, turned the music up, and I tried to ignore it. The longer the night went on, though, the worse it got. Lights were flashing everywhere. A dot matrix printer in the sales office started going on its own, something that never happened, and that office was locked. Then ceiling tiles started moving up as if someone hit them with a broom handle. Oh, I don't like that. That's gross. No. They started closest to me from my studio down the hall and ended at the front door, which was locked. Then the front door opened. A locked fucking door opened. I went down the hall to close and relock it. When I did, I saw through the door window that there was a coffee cup and a cigar on the front stoop. There was no reason for them to be there. On my way back to the studio, I got a big burst of cigar smell, like an invisible smoke cloud, right in my face. I knew my usual duties were required, but I didn't care at this point. I went off the air, grabbed my keys, and noped right the fuck out of there. I ran to my car, backed up, and looked through the front door. A figure was standing inside, silhouetted in front of the transmitter light. I peeled out and went straight home. I would have done the same thing. Now, all of that is screwy, but it's not the most unexplainable thing. Is it 100% impossible someone didn't somehow sneak in and play a very elaborate prank on me? No. There's a slight, minuscule chance someone did, but to this day, I don't know how. It was an old, tiny building, but I still hold the possibility that it could have been a prank. I got home and told my mom the whole story. My heart was still pounding. She was all, well, it's bedtime. So I go to my bedroom and dial up a BBS to write someone what had happened to me. As I was typing up the story, my modem speaker turned on. If you are old enough to remember dial-up modems, you know the speaker doesn't just turn on once a connection is made. I'm just gonna raise my hand because that's me. He's right. They wouldn't even turn back on if someone in the house picked up the phone. You just get a lot of bad data on the screen and your modem would disconnect. The speaker turns on, and a voice comes up from the speaker mixed with the static of the data connection. It screeched, "Help me." The speaker then turned off and nothing else changed on my screen. The speaker turning on and the voice coming out solidified in my brain. I remember the screech like it was yesterday. I have no explanation for it. My mom was the only other person in the house, and she wouldn't have done something like that. She couldn't have done something like that. It was the scariest night of my life. I am as skeptical as you can be about anything ghost or UFO related, but that night is beyond my ability to explain. As kind of a footnote to all of this, I go back to that station every now and then when I go home to visit. I still know some people who work there. Jimmy is still active and is well known by the staff. The little scary one, no one else has reported seeing him. Okay, well, that's creepy as well. I want to know, did you quit your job that night because you were so freaked out? Did you go back? Did anything else happen after that? I need to know more answers. I need to know. All right, this is from Kazu Sama 2 years ago. At one of my previous admin jobs, we were closing down one of our smaller data centers as it was being consolidated into one of our larger ones, but we still had to have at least one person there in case of server issues that had to be dealt with on site. We rotated each week on which one of us would do the overnights there. The place was reportedly haunted. By what? I have no idea. Just heard rumors from other coworkers when I was hired in. So imagine a relatively large open office space that is completely void of all the cubicles, desks, etc. that are normally there, with just one desk and a few random cables hanging from the ceiling. Also, just the lights over my desk were working and bleeding out into my surroundings by about 3 feet. That was where I was for a week, LOL. Sounds like a beautiful, charming place. I remember sitting there and just hearing ambient noises from the sort of far-off server rooms like fans, coding systems, etc. Working on a server for a customer of ours and seeing something dart across the room in my peripheral vision. I looked up and didn't see anything, so I figured my eyes were just tired from the screen light and making me see like those floaties when your eyes close too tightly. Went back to work, and then about 5 minutes later, I saw it again. Although this time I heard the bathroom door open and shut. It's a big ass heavy door you pulled open, and the mechanism at top of the door pulled it shut. Thought maybe one of my coworkers was here for a server fix, so got up, went to greet them, and wait for them. About 10 minutes pass, and no one comes out of the bathroom. I go in to make sure they're not passed out or hurt. One of my coworkers suffered from seizures, but lo and behold, empty bathroom. Oh, they could have been like taking a shit or something. Gotta give them some time. Can't rush perfection now. Now I'm creeped out. Leave the bathroom and this time see the shadow person thing on the other side of the room dart across again, but looking at it straight on and not from my peripheral vision. Quickly went over and threw the rest of the lights on and started searching the whole office and server room for a coworker, as I was 100% sure they were fucking with me. Never found anybody. Rest of the night was uneventful, as well as the rest of the week, minus me basically shitting bricks sitting at my desk waiting for something else to happen. Well, at least we know you didn't quit your job. Unlike the other one, we're not so sure. Why are all these places haunted? Like, who died? I mean, your office kind of sounds gray, but there's a lot of ghost stories in here. Or shadow people. What do you think? Okay. This is by Johnny B. 1917. I've shared this story on Reddit and I've been thinking about it a lot lately. It's not exactly a scary thing I saw, but I still wonder about it all the time. So, here we go. My best friend and I would always talk about crazy dreams we had. Never thought much of it until he told me about one where he got hit by a car and he died. We were about 15 to 16 when he told me about the dream. We were into conspiracies, stuff like aliens, paranormal, lucid dreaming. Same, sis. So we talk about stuff like that a lot. And he died right before he would have turned 20. That's really sad. He said he was riding a skateboard wearing all black when the car hit him and could see everyone at his funeral. He even said his crush was at his funeral and laughed about it. He just kept going on about how it was so real and it really shook me up until eventually I just forgot about it. Then a few years later, after I long forgot about the dream he told me about, it happened for real. His crush was at his funeral. He did get hit by a car and died. He was wearing all black like in the dream because they were his work clothes, and he was riding my skateboard. It was all true. I still don't know what to make of it all. Every single detail I remember from his dream came true, and I'm sure there's parts of it he told me that I don't remember. I felt crazy. I didn't tell anyone about. I just don't know why or how he saw it happen in his dream and think about it if he've never told me about it. He just left me with so many questions. But I guess now I have proof, at least to myself, that our souls go on after we die. I just wish I knew why he experienced that dream and told me about it, like there had been some sort kind of reason. I just think about how I wouldn't believe this story if I haven't experienced it for myself. Wow, that one's kind of heavy. It's like he saw a premonition of his own death. That's really sad. He died really young too. Wow. And he probably shared it with you because he thought it was crazy that he saw his own death. And I mean, it's a dream. You talk about dreams with friends, especially if you're into conspiracies and paranormal stuff. There was this abandoned house in the middle of nowhere, like 30 minutes of back roads to find it, and no other people for at least 10 miles in any direction. Me and some friends used to go check out this spooky house and show it off to 1 or 2 new folks at a time. We did this 3 or 4 times, and as we're pulling up one night, a light in the house turned on. The house didn't have power any time we'd been there, and there was no vehicles anywhere around the house that night. Scared us all to the point none of us ever went back. In retrospect, it was probably being used as a hunting cabin or meth house, although there was never any indication either that we saw. And they probably just had the beaker off when they weren't there. A car could have been parked behind in a place we couldn't see from the road, but as high school kids, nope, spooky house with unexplained lights. I feel like everyone I feel like everyone knows a house like that. Like, oh hey, that's like the ghost house or something. I don't know. This is by Small Land Outdoor 2 years ago. When I was 9 years old, I was biking home in the evening. We lived in the countryside up a small mountain. The road from the village was an uphill, a flat section, and then another uphill. The road lights only stretched to the end of the flat section. I was a bit afraid of the dark, so I stopped at the end of the road lights just at the bottom of the last uphill to gather courage to bike the last section home. It was a partial moon, so it wasn't pitch black, and at the end of the uphill, I saw a figure walking down towards me. I thought I'd wait until he or she got closer, as I would feel less afraid to bike in the dark if there was someone else close. But about halfway down the hill, the person walked into a thin shadow of a tree on the road and never came back out. Just disappeared. I stood there for a while, trying to figure out what I just saw, and then panicked and biked down in the village and stayed there until my parents came driving and wondering why I never came home. They tried to explain it was stuff like the person might have gone into the woods or something. What they didn't disclose, though, out of fear that I've never dared to bike home again, was that my father had seen the same thing walking home from work. He had seen her clear as day walking down the hill for a while. When he looked down for just a second and looked up, she was gone, and there were no footsteps in the fresh snow. I later read a book about local legends, and apparently a lot of people during at least a century have seen her walking down the hill and disappearing halfway down. My youngest daughter loved this story, so we've been on ghost stakeouts where we buy pizzas and snacks and hang out at the bottom of the hill, listening to the Ghostbusters theme song and try to see the ghosts. Can I be friends with you because you sound pretty awesome? Also, I love Ghostbusters, and there's a metal version of Ghostbusters, and it's a pretty good one. I mean, there's like, it doesn't really say what she was wearing, but we talked about it multiple times on here that there's always a woman in white in the window, a woman in white walking here, a woman in white like going across the hallway in whatever house. There's always a woman in white. And if you watch, Supernatural, the very first episode was the woman in white. It's a lot of women in white. It's like they don't wear any other colors. I'm just kidding. This is by Professor Beer. 2 years ago. Love that for you. So in college, I studied in the UK. I lived in a house with a group of other American students that had stories of the ghost of a girl who passed away while living there. I never believed in any of it, but it was fun to play along. The kitchen had one way in and out. The right after you entered the kitchen, to your right was a padlocked door to the cellar where she allegedly lived. I had the only key. We were all a little homesick near Thanksgiving, so decided to do a meal together. This required some creative cooking schedules due to small appliances in the kitchen, so one girl who didn't have class the next day offered to stay up late to get the turkey going. We went into the cellar the first and only time that evening to get larger cooking implements. At 2:04 in the morning, I wake up to my door rattling, like someone was pushing against it. I assumed it was a housemate who just went to the wrong door. About 30 seconds later, when I hear a scratchy female voice softly saying, "Hello," every 5 seconds or so. My window was open and it sounded like it was coming from outside, so I get up to close my window as I assume it's some drunk girl walking back from the pub. I get to the window and there's no one there, and then I hear, "Hello," clear as a bell behind me. My door rattles again and goes silent. I've had night terrors before and hallucinate when I have seen a mild fever, so I assume I'm still asleep and lay back down. The next morning at 7 a.m., the girl who's cooking tells me, "I had the creepiest night. At 1:50, I heard footsteps coming up the cellar stairs, then the door rattled. Then at 2:10, the door rattled again and I heard footsteps coming down." She told me this before I had said anything to anyone about what I experienced. Oh, that's terrifying. This reminds me of when I used to have the living room upstairs in my house, and I was sitting on my couch. I was watching TV, and the couch is up against the wall, and the wall it's up against has a door, and the door always stays locked because the couch is up against it. So you have to enter the room from a different way because you can enter the room 2 different ways. And so I'm sitting on the couch watching TV, and then something or someone is shaking the door handle, like they're rattling it, like they're trying to open the door, and I could like see it go back and forth. I watched it go back and forth. This is what it makes me think of. It was really creepy, and I'm the only one home at that time, so that was a really freaky experience. And it only happened the one time. I don't know if the ghost got confused and was trying to enter the wrong door, because the other door you can enter, we have a barn door, and that one was cut out from the wall. So originally the house, you could only enter the door from the hallway. So that would kind of make sense if the ghost of whoever used to live here at some point was going back to a bedroom that used to be. All right. This is by Everett Sucks. Someone really hates Everett. And this was 2 years ago. My mom and I were driving up from Texas to Washington in late October. We stopped to rest in the national park in southern Colorado, and we're pretty much the only people there. Oh, so jealous. I love it when national parks are empty. Oh, I love it. It was usually daylight when we stopped to rest because my mom preferred driving at night. We were sitting there making something to eat when this guy on a bicycle went past us and just glared at us with his hate-filled eyes. My mom and I were pretty creeped out by him, but went on about our business, and then I laid down in the car to sleep. Her up front and my boxer and I in the back seat. I got this feeling like I was being watched, and then my dog's hackles went up and she started this really deep down kind of growl. She only ever made that growl when she was really bothered by something. I reached over and chambered around in my shotgun, and my mom heard me and said, "Hey, are you awake? Do you want to get out of here?" And I said, "Hell yeah, I do." We got up and I stood guard with my shotgun and the dog when she packed everything into the car and we left. We couldn't see him, but we could both feel him watch us, and the dog didn't settle down until we'd left that place far behind. We made a beeline for Moab. Oh, I was just there. Hey. Moab's a cool city. I like Moab. So if you live in Moab, that's pretty cool. We made a beeline for Moab and stopped at this truck stop to rest indeed. When we got up, we went in and got something to eat and met this really friendly trucker and told him what happened. He shadowed us north for quite a ways and then handled us off to other truckers. They shadowed us all the way to Idaho. They were all a great bunch of guys for sure. Also, you must be from Texas if you have a shotgun with you going to national parks camping. I'm just saying. That's a Texas thing to do. I got the shotgun. It's sad Jessica's not here to appreciate my jokes. But you guys are, and you're like, yeah, you're not funny. Cool. All right, this is by Separate Audience 68, 2 years ago. Working in a nursing home for years during the night, and everyone always complained of weird stuff, like noises on the top floor. I never believed in any of that, so I was always the one going upstairs to do the night checks. One night, I was changing a resident on the floor with a colleague, and my colleague complained he heard something like people walking. We were in the resident room, and I had to go to the cupboard at the end of the corridor to get bed sheets, and when I was coming back with the bed sheets, I kept hearing steps, like if someone was touching and opening plastic bags. I was so annoyed and looked outside the room and saw a shadow passing the corridor. The issue is that the shadow was so big, like if literally a person just passed by along with step noises and plastic bags. I freaked out so badly and froze completely. I had to call another colleague to come upstairs because I was so scared of coming out of the resident room. Bear in mind that I do not believe in those things, and for 2 years, I was always the one doing night checks on the top floor and the bottom floor on my own. Never had any problem and never saw something. Since that day, I never went upstairs alone and was always very scared. I always believe those stories that people talk, especially in nursing homes. You have a lot of death in nursing homes. There's a lot of energy in nursing homes. There's a lot of energy in hospice. So when people say stuff happens, I'm a person to believe that. And even too, when you enter places like that, if you are sensitive to that sort of stuff, then you can definitely feel the energy there and pick up on what kind of energy it is. Also, good for everyone that works in the nursing homes and hospice. It's not for everyone, and we need more good people like that. All right. This is by I.E. Hova. I took a contact to overhaul AV and security for an ancient funeral home a few years back. Never been spooked by the paranormal in my life, and that includes an overnight stay in a cemetery when I was a teen. I had to do my work at night due to other contract obligations during the day, so for about a month I was in that place from 8 p.m. to 8 a.m. I was given the usual "this place is haunted" spiel, complete with all the stories and "avoid this spot" nonsense. In particular, the owner insisted that under no circumstances do I do any work in the morgue at night, and I didn't care to ask questions since I was already just about done with folks trying to involve me in their delusion. Well, you're one of those. 2 weeks in, and I hear what sounds like faint screaming coming from the morgue. No lights on, no cars out front, doors locked, never saw anyone go in or out. I ignore it for another week, but I continued to hear occasional screaming, and once I heard a man shout at the top of his lungs in the parking lot. How do you ignore this? I'd finally had enough and decided to head in the next time I heard screaming. Opened the door, pitch black with the TV in the back of the long room turned into some 80s slasher. Instantly put me on edge. It's the only light and nobody was in there. I walked down the length of the room, and in the next doorway where they process the bodies, I see a faint light coming under the door. I am completely freaked out at this point, but I continued walking towards it and eventually opened the door. I was greeted by the sight of a dead body in a room that looked straight out of a 60s asylum, and the mortician was standing there dumbfounded at the sight of me. Dude Clock said I'm 100% cooked and bust out laughing. I was told to not go into the morgue because he works nights and they didn't want me disturbing him or disrespecting the dead. He lived in an adjacent apartment behind the morgue and enters using the back door. He keeps the lights off because he likes it better the way and enjoys watching horror movies on his breaks because the dude is on brand. Kind of sounds like a psychopath to me. So what we talked about with nursing homes and hospice care and morgues is definitely up there with you can feel energy in a morgue, and obviously that's where dead bodies go, and where dead body goes, energy's gonna follow. It's gonna pick up a lot of stuff. So even if they didn't want him going in there because of the guy that works there, I think there's other reasons to that. And there are some really disturbing stories out there about what happens at morgues, and people have their own personal experiences, and they're creepy AF, and I think maybe that would be a good episode to do. I'm gonna be like, I'm Jessica. I agree with you, Montana. Thanks, Jessica. I come up with these great ideas all the time. Okay, let's do, this is by Anaconda TMZ, 2 years ago. I was about 12 at the time. Every year, my parents and I would drive from Montreal to Nova Scotia to visit family. Having always gone the Trans-Canada route, we decided to go through the States for a change. So we ended up going southeast through Maine and eventually onto NB, then NS. I remember we were in a very, very remote area, like hadn't seen a house for a long time. This was before GPS on Google's map, so there was a growing concern in the vehicle that we might run out of gas. I don't remember the name of the road, but it was a country road that had mountains on the right side, went straight up through dense bush. And on the left, it was a dense bush on a steep downhill where I could make out a river at the bottom of the cliff, about a 75 to 100 down the hill. Trees hung over the road, so despite it being a sunny day, the road was shady with the exception of places where the sun would break through. I heard my dad at front ask my mom, "What the fuck is that up ahead?" As I leaned over to look up down the road, we could see what looked like a man off in the distance on the side of the road. Too far to see color or anything, just a big dark shape standing there. As we rolled on down the road, this dude, or whatever it was, crossed the road, both lanes, and I shit you not, 3 to 4 steps, once on the other side of the roads, just vanished into the woods. As we got to the spot where he crossed, Dad slowed right down to look around. Nothing, not a sight or anyone, no trail, nothing. No one knows what they say, but 30 years later, it gets brought up every couple of years and the feelings are mutual. Fucking weird and creepy. Yeah, that's kind of weird. I remember one time, me and my dad were driving, it was like 2 lanes each way, and this like lady, she comes out of the woods, out of nowhere, and she darts across lanes of traffic to get like the medium section, and the medium had grass on it, and she just takes her, like she pulls her pants down and squats like she had to go to the bathroom even though she already came from the woods. That's the weirdest, one of the weirdest things I've seen driving. And my dad was like, "Did you just see what I saw?" And I was like, "Okay, good, I'm not crazy, you saw that too." It was weird. Okay, so we'll do one more, and this is by Throat Babies, 2 years ago. Back in college, me and my girlfriend would go back to her parents' old farmhouse and fool around after class. There was never anybody home. One afternoon, I'm standing in her kitchen, thirsty, guzzling a post-sex Gatorade. Behind me was a back staircase leading up to the second floor of the house. When I finished my drink and turned to leave the room, I noticed a little girl between 7 to 10 years old standing on the bottom step. Ooh. My earbud just fell out and it scared the shit out of me. Oh my god. My first thought was, oh crap, why didn't my girlfriend tell me there was a little girl in the house? I really hope she didn't hear what we were up to. But before I could speak, I realized something was off. She was semi-transparent and oddly two-dimensional in a way I can't articulate. Slowly, I came to the realization that I was staring at a ghost. There was nothing inherently frightening about the experience. Knowing I was in the presence of something unexplainable, I did everything in my power not to blink. I stared at her for a good 10 to 15 seconds, taking in every detail I could. She had a red and yellow summer dress on, long blonde hair that was tied into a couple of those old-timey braids at the end, black strapped shoes, overall look gave me 1940s, 1970s vibe. That's kind of a big gap there in clothing apparel, so no idea. Fortunately for her, she seemed to have no idea I existed. She stood on the bottom step, looking out the back window towards the driveway like she was waiting for someone to arrive. I never took my eyes off her. Eventually, she was just gone. I never believed in ghosts before that. I still don't believe in intelligent hauntings, but I certainly entertain the idea of residual energy and echoes of the past. I agree, and that was probably a residual energy, and you could have crossed different timelines. The timelines are overlapped. They're overshadowed each other. And that's what she was doing at that time. But I also don't mess with ghost children. They're creepy. Those are some pretty creepy stories. Very entertaining. And it's either up to you if you believe, if you're skeptic. We all know, if you've been here long enough, I believe in this sort of stuff. I don't like messing around with this sort of stuff. When you walk into certain places, you're going to get the types of energies, either good or bad. And Jessica will be here next week, so I'm just not talking to myself, even though I'm talking to you guys. You guys are keeping me company, but it's weird to not have her here since we've been doing this for so long now. So we'll be back. Hopefully her internet gets situated, and we got some good stories coming up for you guys, so stay tuned. And you can follow us on all the social medias at Weekly Bizarre Podcast. You can email us at weeklybizarrepodcast@gmail.com if you have any topics you want us to talk about, anything about the episode that, like Dogman. What is a Dogman? Like, if you think about that, you can email us. You can join us on Patreon at patreon.com/weeklybizarre. It's only $5 a month, and we have a lot of content on there, and it really does support us, and we use the money toward making the podcast better and better because we're here for you guys, and we're trying to improve as much as we can every week. We work really hard, so we appreciate that. And if it's weird, we're going to talk about it.